we're concluding today and next time lyrical, romantic poetry. And we're going to talk about Coleridge today. But I put Wordsworth and Coleridge up here today because Coleridge and Wordsworth in 1798, in the introduction to Wordsworth on page 789.
It says 1798, the boy says 1789.
1798, thank you, but it was very strange. 1798, you're right. Ah, I was writing backwards. 1798, thank you. And it's also on page 789. So.
That's probably why you wrote that.
Yeah. Okay, in your books on page 789, in your books on page 789, the introduction to Wordsworth talks about what Wordsworth and Coleridge set out to do. In 1789, they created this idea of a project of romantic poetry, and they got together and put together a collection of the lyrical ballads. Remember, we did the genre wheel, we studied that, looked at that, and so we know about lyric poetry, we know what that is. But they set out to create a new kind of poetry that's, you know, about the common man, common things, and it's this romantic idea where you're looking for something transcendent and all that. But the reason that I kind of put this up here today, first of all, is so that you know that Wordsworth and Coleridge are contemporaries, they know each other, they're friends, and all of that. And today we're going to talk about Kubla Khan. Remember that poetry, I mean, if you're in, you know, when you're in high school, you know, you kind of have a bad day, you go home and you kind of gush about how bad you feel on paper, maybe. You write poetry about, you know, my boyfriend broke up with me, or the dummy's going out with the wrong girl, or whatever, you know, something like that. So you kind of gush about your feelings. Poetry, like the poetry that we're reading, though, is carefully constructed. And these two guys set out to write a very specific kind of poetry. It is an art form. It's not just kind of write about flowers and pretty things or strange stuff or whatever. There's actually a form to it, although it's not the same kind of strict structure that like Alexander Pope has. Instead, it's a freer form, and you're going to get weirder stuff maybe in the poetry, but there is a plan to it. And I wanted us to think about that before we talked about Kubla Khan. On page 813 of Volume E, page 813, okay? Let's look at that. I'm hoping that you read this, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And just the Dr. Phil question here. Kubla Khan. In Xanadu did Kubla Khan a stately pleasure doth decree, where out the sacred river ran through caverns measureless to man, down to a sunless sea. And all of that. That actually is, yeah. So twice 5 miles of fertile ground, with walls and towers were girdled round, and there were gardens bright with sinuous rills, where blossomed many an incense-bearing tree. And here were forests ancient as the hills, enfolding sunny spots of greenery. I'm now on page 814. But oh, that deep romantic chasm, which slanted down the green hill athwart a cedarn cover, a savage place, as holy and enchanted as ere beneath a waning moon was haunted by a woman wailing for her demon lover. Ah, that's kind of scary, huh? And from this chasm with ceaseless turmoil seething, as if this earth in fast, thick pants were breathing, a mighty fountain momently was forced, amid whose swift half-intermittent burst huge fragments vaulted like rebounding hail, or chaffy grain beneath the thresher's flail. And mid these dancing rocks, at once and ever, it flung up momently the sacred river. 5 miles meandering with mazy motion, through wood and dale the sacred river ran, then reached the caverns, measureless to man, and sank in tumult to a lifeless ocean, and mid this tumult Kubla heard from far ancestral voices prophesying war. The shadow of the dome of pleasure floated midway on the waves, where was heard the mingled measure from the fountain and the caves. It was a miracle of rare device, a sudden pleasure dome with caves of ice. A damsel with a dulcimer, in a vision once I saw, it was an Abyssinian maid, and on her dulcimer she played, singing of Mount Abara, Could I revive within me her symphony and song? To such a deep delight would win me that with music loud and long I would build that dome in air, that sunny dome, those caves of ice. And all who heard should see them there, and all should cry, beware, beware, his flashing eyes, his floating hair. Weave a circle round him thrice, and close your eyes with holy dread, for he on honeydew hath fed, and drunk the milk of paradise. How does that make you feel, Ben?
Peachy.
Peachy. What does all that mean?
Very passionate.
Very passionate. Okay, that works with romantic poetry, right? The passions, the emotions. What's it about? Hiding. You don't know.
I had to guess it's about somebody finding a demon lover.
Somebody finding a demon lover. I like that as a place to start. Okay.
Well, it's in there at the end of the thing, isn't it?
Yeah, the words are there. Finding a demon lover. Ooh, that sounds really good. Yeah. That's scary. Tia, what was it about?
I don't know. I think I was just really stuck on how, like you said, how really forceful he is about this situation.
It's forceful. You said passionate. Okay.
Well, first it kind of starts talking about like that river and then that woman and singing. And
She's a muse.
River woman singing.
She's a muse.
She's a muse. Who is?
Whoever this woman is.
Which woman?
A Abyssinian maid.
Ah, we've got the, oh, so now we kind of have a muse. The Abyssinian maid. Singing. Okay. She comes in at the end. Is she up there in the top? Is there a story here? Do you know what happened in this?
I don't understand.
It's kind of hard to understand, isn't it? Okay, then who read the paragraph back over there on 813, or the introduction on 813? How did he wind up writing? Where's the title, first of all? What is the poem called? Kubla Khan. What's the rest of the title?
What a vision and a dream.
A vision and a dream. A fragment. It's just a fragment, right? Why is it a fragment? Where's the rest of it?
He got distracted and couldn't finish.
He got distracted. He couldn't finish. Why?
He lost his train of thought. Somebody asked him to help him do something.
What? Somebody woke him up from his dream. How do you know? What? No, that's yeah. Okay. What did y'all read this part that's on the top of 813? Okay. What does all this say up here?
Summer.
Was the summer?
You got a room.
Pardon?
It says that he went and got a room or something. Went to sleep.
Okay. Let's read through it. Okay. It's supposed to be a fragment. He says, in the summer. This is the long paragraph on 813. In the summer of the year 1797, the author, then in ill health, had retired to a farmhouse. Blah blah blah. In consequence of a slight indisposition, an anodyne had been prescribed, from the effects of which he fell asleep in his chair, and he was reading something in Purchas's Pilgrimage about here the Kubla Khan, the Khan Kubla, commanded a palace to be built and a stately garden thereto, and thus 10 miles of fertile ground were enclosed within a wall. Well, the author continued for about 3 hours in a profound sleep, at least of the external senses. Do you remember about the eye made quiet in Wordsworth? while with an eye made quiet, we can see into the life of things with the breath and the blood is kind of almost suspended. Do you remember that line, Tintern Abbey? It's a really important line, hint, hint. Okay.
What was that line?
It is on page 793. Until the breath of this corporeal frame and even the motion of our human blood almost suspended, we are laid asleep in body and become a living soul, while with an eye made quiet by the power of harmony and the deep power of joy, we see into the life of things. So it's when it's that overcoming the despotism of the eye. It's that idea that, so he's kind of talking about the same thing, but not entirely, because he says, why did he fall asleep?
Drugs.
Drugs. Yes, it was actually an opium addiction. Yes, Coleridge historically had trouble with opium. It was more like, at that time though, it was a problem with a prescription drug. It wasn't like he was like running out to the street corner to buy some. He had opium prescribed for an illness, and then he had a hard time getting off of it, and so he kept a doctor with him for some time that tried to help him overcome this, to get off of the drugs. Now, so he says, I took some of this and I fell asleep for about 3 hours in a profound sleep, at least of the external senses, during which time he has the most vivid confidence that he could have composed not less than 200 to 300 lines. So he says, that dream I had, I could have written a 200 to 300 line poem and all of this, but when he woke up, he had this real recollection. He could have written the whole thing down, but some guy came on business from Porlock, and when he got interrupted, and so when he came back to write down the poem, he couldn't remember anymore. Now, here's the thing I want to ask you to think about. Where is the title? No, where's the title? Like the title of the poem located on the page? Simple, totally at the top of the page. Where did that paragraph that I just kind of skimmed through, where is that?
After that.
After the title. Just kind of think about that. Okay, now, so he says, oh, all this stuff is gone, I can't remember it. And so, the still surviving recollections, he gives us this fragment here. Now, let's just go through slowly and see what it's about. Okay, we're going to start at like line 1 on page 814. Page 814, like lines 1 through 4 or 5. Why Xanadu and Kubla Khan? Just say the word Xanadu.
Xanadu.
What does it feel like?
Weird.
Xanadu.
A drug.
Feels kind of weird, kind of like
Xanax.
Pardon?
Nothing.
I missed that. Oh well. I can go back and watch it. So Xanadu, it doesn't sound like Chickasaw. No. Tillman's Corner?
Oh, I thought the form.
It sounds foreign and exotic, right? Like a place you go on a mystical vacation or something, right? What?
Japanese city.
Maybe a Japanese city. Yeah, it sounds really kind of far out. You're not going to run into boring people there. What?
Far out.
Far out. Okay, yes, I'm old. So it's really strange. In Xanadu, did Kubla Khan, what did he do? Where's your verb? Kubla Khan did...
Decree.
He decreed what?
A stately pleasure dome.
What does it mean to decree a pleasure dome? He says, go build one.
Oh.
He passes a law saying, we're going to build a pleasure dome.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool, right? Sounds rather exotic that the king would decree to build this pleasure palace dome thing, right? I mean, that's exotic. Okay. Now, where is he going to do this?
And Xanadu.
Okay, okay, the twice 5 miles of fertile ground. What's twice 5 miles? 10 miles. Okay, but it sounds much better than twice 5 miles. That's more elaborate. And it's where Alf, the sacred river, ran. Tell me about where this goes.
To the ocean.
Where?
The ocean.
Okay, to an ocean. What kind of ocean? A sunless one. So it goes through caves. Have you ever been to a sunless ocean?
Yes, I have.
It's just like a lake cave,
It's a lake cave. Okay.
lake within a cave.
Yeah, like where people go, they sometimes go diving and there's no light down there. How would you feel being in an underground ocean cave?
Shady.
Would be worth it.
It would not
Sketchy.
scare, would not be worth it. I have claustrophobia and I'm not crazy about the dark. It seems kind of creepy, doesn't it? Do you think so? It's kind of like another world. I mean, even with all the science shows about the fish that glow in the dark down there and all that, I still don't want to go there. It seems creepy.
Sounds fun.
Okay.
Let's go.
Does it seem creepy to you, niece? No, he's not scared
He's
of
like, I
anything.
wrestled with a tiger.
He's wrestled with a lion and still survived, so
Oh,
he's
yeah.
okay with this. So it's, but it creeped me out. I don't want to go into a dark, okay. And so he's kind of, now do you remember, I want you to tell me what is the sublime? What is the sublime? What do you encounter in the sublime?
Supernatural things.
Supernatural things like the little people and fairies,
Yes.
right?
Exactly it.
Something transcendent.
Something transcendent. Is it like sweet, happy, transcendent things, or
No, it's something.
you can't grasp it, and it's like the power of God, although we shouldn't use the word God there because it's like they're trying to find something that is like God. So we're not really using the word God here, but it's something like God, but it's the scary side of God, right? You would encounter it in ruins, right? If you go to the ruins of some old castle, or the houses, the buildings where they would keep the bones of dead people until they could be buried, or Job encounters God in the whirlwind. So it's that dark side of the powerful God, right? And so think about what he's doing here. He says, Kubla Khan declares that there will be this pleasure dome built, and it's where Alf, the sacred river, runs down to this dark sea. It's a cave, a sea, an ocean, lake, whatever, under the cave, so there's no sun. Twice 5 miles of fertile ground with walls and towers were girdled round. He builds the walls and towers. And there were gardens bright, with sinuous rills, where blossomed many an incense-bearing tree. And here were forests, ancient as the hills, enfolding sunny spots of greenery. What's there? How does that sound?
Pretty.
Pretty. What's an incense-bearing tree?
Smells nice.
It smells nice. Must be, I don't know, it's like, might have a lemon tree. Wow, it smells great when it blooms, you know? And so it's like orange trees or lemon trees or something that smell really good, you know? So it's kind of nice. Okay. And there's sunny spots of greenery. But oh, now he switches. But oh, that deep romantic chasm which slanted down the green hill athwart the cedar. What is a cedar cover? What is cedar?
Some type of wood.
A tree. Yes, it's a tree, and it's covers over,
Apparently it's tall as a canopy.
and it's tall, and so it kind of shades everything. And what is this place called? It's what kind of place?
Savage.
Savage. Now the place is as savage. It is as holy and enchanted as ever beneath the waning moon was haunted
Savage.
by woman wailing for her demon lover. Is there a woman wailing for her demon lover there? It's what? It's a comparison. It's a simile, right? So it's a savage place. It's creepy. It's just as creepy as a woman standing out there in the moonlight wailing for her demon lover. I haven't experienced that in my neighborhood, but if I ever see a woman who's shrieking for her demon lover in the street, I'm calling the police, right? You know, that just seems creepy. Midnight. Okay, so it's supposed to be scary. It's holy, enchanted, savage. And from this chasm with ceaseless turmoil seething, tell me what these next 3 lines mean here, okay? I want you to read them. Who's going? Can you read this for me? Miss Ward, right?
Yes.
Miss Ward. Okay, starting at, and from this chasm, read 3 lines.
And from this chasm with ceaseless turmoil, something as if this earth in fast thick pants were breathing. A mighty foundation momently was forced, amid whose swift hand intermittent burst. Huge fragments vaulted like rebounding veil or shafty grain beneath the thresher's veil.
Okay, stop right there. What happens there? What's going on there?
It's describing something.
Yes.
It's a volcano. It's a volcano.
It's kind of a volcano. What's the volcano spitting out?
Steam.
What?
It's the
Green.
Steam. Okay. A mighty, what was shooting out?
Fountain.
Fountain, yes. And so it's a mighty fountain that shoots out, and along with the water comes huge fragments, rocks. It's shooting out water and rocks, okay? And mid these dancing rocks, at once and ever, it flung up momently the sacred river. So this is the source of the river. This is where the water comes from. It's shooting out the water and some rocks and it goes into the sacred river there. That's kind of, I mean, it's powerful. Okay, we've got passion, force, right? It's something that's really mystical. Okay. 5 miles meandering with a mazy motion. Through wood and dale, the sacred river ran, then reached what?
Measureless.
And it's important to think about that. This is romantic poetry. It's measureless to man. Okay. Do y'all know about Google? Have y'all found your homes on Google Earth and all that? You can go on Google Earth, that's just downright creepy. You can see your Christmas decorations on my house, which is just really weird. You know, it's like, you know pretty much when the picture was taken and everything. It's kind of creepy. What cavern? Where's there a cave on this earth that we haven't measured? Are there any? Probably some somewhere. But can we measure them?
Potentially.
Potentially, okay. We could measure them, but he's saying that these are caverns measureless to man. And they're coming after the Enlightenment, right? That age of reason, where we've got to be able to measure everything, you know? So he's saying, this is one way of talking about the sublime. It's a place that's savage, holy, enchanted. It's measureless. You cannot measure it. And it's dark. There's no sun there. You can't put the light of reason on it, I guess. It's really creepy and far out again, sorry. Okay. So it's the caverns measureless to man and sank in tumult to a lifeless ocean. And mid this tumult Kubla heard from far ancestral voices prophesying war. The shadow of the dome of pleasure floated on the waves. Now what I don't understand, okay, the shadow is floating on the waves of what?
Building.
Of what?
I don't know.
What?
Building?
Well, on the waves, where are the waves?
The sunless sea.
The sunless sea. Can you have a shadow on a sunless? You can't do that. You cannot have a shadow on a sun. It's irrational. It's illogical. It's not reasonable. Anti-age of reason, right? You can't have a shadow where there's no sun. So he's just being crazy, which is what he's trying to do. Now, do you think this is just, I mean, think about whether you think, is this just the product of an opium trip?
Yes.
You think so? But wait. He says, it was a miracle of rare device, a sunny pleasure dome with caves of ice. Stop for like 30 seconds here. Somebody just tell me, what does the pleasure dome look like?
Igloo.
Ice castle, igloo, okay. Where is it? Describe. This, there's no sun on the waves. Is the dome itself where there's sun?
Yes.
Okay, because we had the pretty stuff up there at the top, the incense-bearing trees and all of that. Sunny spots of greenery. The cave, what are the caves made out of? Okay, so in your heads, right, you know about caves of ice? You see them, right? You see a pleasure dome in your head. I don't really know what it is exactly, but it's a pleasure dome. You can see the one that he described, right? Okay. A damsel with a dulcimer in a vision once I saw. You know, a dulcimer is like a musical instrument, kind of like it's a stringed instrument, but you hold it on your lap. Am I right? It's like a guitar, but you hold it flat and play it like, okay. A damsel with a dulcimer. How does that sound compared to the holy and the woman wailing for her demon lover? Which one sounds more normal?
Playing the dulcimer.
The dulcimer playing woman. She's just playing a guitar, right? Basically. Okay. In a vision once I saw, it was an Abyssinian maid, and on her dulcimer she played, singing of Mount Abura. Could I revive within me her symphony and song, to such a deep delight would win me, that with music loud and long, what would he do? It's the next line.
Build the dome in the air.
He would build the dome in air. What dome?
Pleasure dome.
The pleasure dome, that sunny dome. What else?
Okay.
The caves of ice. How would he build them in air? What?
Just a thought
In his imagination.
In his imagination, and how would he, okay, okay. Remember, lots of poetry is about poetry, okay. Could I revive within me her symphony and song, to such a deep delight 'twould win me, that with music loud.
Yeah, with the music.
Okay, with music, what would he do?
That's the
music, he would build the dome.
Rebuild it.
He's going to rebuild it. And why does he say in air?
Because
He's gonna
sound
sing
waves
it.
move through air.
He's going to sing it. Sound waves move through the air. So it sounds like, yeah, it sounds all mystical, like you're going to have this floating pleasure dome. And I don't know if you take little helicopters up there, we can visit it. That's not what he means. He means he's going to sing a song. Or, right, how did you know that, have you seen a pleasure dome in your heads today? And sunny spots of greenery? And caves of ice? What? Did you see, do you have in your head from today? Yeah.
Yeah,
How?
the vision. Yeah, the vision.
Okay, where did it come from?
From his description.
From his description in the poem, right? So he says, well, gee, I wish I could remember her song, because if I could, I would build a dome in the air and the caves of ice and all of that. What did he do in the poem? He built it, yes. Now he says it's a fragment, but is it a fragment? He ends by saying, gee, sorry, I can't build you that pleasure dome, and I can't tell you about the caves of ice, and I can't tell you about the sacred river. I just can't tell you about any of that because I can't remember her song, and I woke up and it's just a fragment. But didn't he do it? And so he has actually, it's unified. There's complete unity. He's actually done this. And so he says at the end, and I love this, it's great, because all the high school teachers say, oh, see, it's just what happens when you take OPM, you write group poetry. But no, look at what he's doing. Okay, he says, and all who heard should see them there. If you hear the poem and can figure out what he's talking about, you can see it there. And all should cry, beware, beware, his flashing eyes, his floating hair. Weave a circle around him thrice. What does that sound like? Weave a circle around him thrice?
It's your day thing.
What?
like strangle him.
Not strangle him, but why would one, who might weave a circle around someone thrice?
Who's he talking about? Who's this person with flashing eyes and floating hair?
The person, he's talking about himself. He's saying that everyone who should see this poem would cry, beware, beware, his flashing eyes, his floating hair. Weave a circle round him thrice and close your eyes with holy dread. It's like casting a spell. It's an incantation to protect you because he must be possessed or something, right? He must be. For he on honeydew hath fed and drunk the milk of paradise. Now, what does that mean? Y'all are not old enough to remember in like the 60s and 70s there were these LSD experiments that poets were doing in some...
That's before our time.
Yeah, no, it's way back when. But it's like, see if you can write better poetry when you're high, which didn't turn out to work. But it sounds like to high school students, it's kind of cool, right? You know, you can say, ooh, look what he's been doing. This is like far out, you know. It's far out again.
Were you part of that LSD?
I need a buzzer or something to stop me from saying far out.
Is that a shot column?
The shot color, yes. But it's one of those things, like, it's the kind of thing that it makes it more mystical. If you think he's been taking drugs, and this must have some connection to the transcendent or the sublime, but it's very carefully constructed. It's not, I mean, he wants you to think that. He wants you to think, he's risen above this world and he's had access to the milk of paradise and honeydew, and his eyes are flashing, his hair is floating, and so people will say, beware, beware. Yeah, high school teachers will say, see, well, we really shouldn't pay too much attention to Coleridge. But look at where the title is. The story about the opium trip and the guy from Porlock, all of that is part of the poem. Don't believe what poets tell you about their poem. Do you see what I'm saying? It's not the trip. It's not the product of an opium trip. It's the product of he's creating this story so it will seem more mystical.
It's kind of like a riddle.
A what?
A riddle.
A riddle, yes, it is. It is, because it comes right back, it's perfectly unified the way that he ends it. You know, he says, I wish I could tell you about this pleasure dome. And then when you go back and look at it, he has. It is, poetry is very much like a riddle. Yes.
So what was the milk of paradise? What did that mean?
He has gotten into connection with the sublime. Or the opium, you can see, yeah. The opium gave him access to the sublime. But it's like, oh, come on, yes.
Can you repeat that statement? You were like, the poem is not about...
The poem is not about...
the
Opium.
Opium, it's about creating a story. Is that what you said?
Okay, yeah, the poem is about writing poetry. It's about itself. It folds back on itself. So that he has built the dome and the caves of ice and all that. He did create it. And so he's saying through poetry, I don't know, it's almost like it's a riddle or a joke almost. That it's not true necessarily that he had an opium trip to write the poem. And it's definitely not true that it's a fragment. The poem is unified. It's not a fragment. That's part of the fiction that he couldn't remember. But it gives you this sense that he must have had access to the next world or something because he dreamt it, that kind of thing. All right. Quick review here. Okay. Number one, what you need to do is learn the titles and authors. Okay? And I can't say this enough because you need to learn them together, and then I posted this on Facebook. I don't know if it was in the middle of the night last night or at some other point, but I said if y'all want to, you could go online on Facebook. You don't have to do this; it's not for a grade, but you could like especially if you've had me before, help out some of the people who are really freaking out. You can tell there are some people that are just distressed as can be because they don't know what to study. It's really not that hard. But if you, what you want to do is you want to just look in your books, like go back and look at Wordsworth. Shh. Go back and look in your books at Wordsworth. Like, let's just take Wordsworth. Okay. For instance, we did lines composed a few miles above Tintern Abbey. All you need to say, Wordsworth. Right. All you need is Tintern Abbey. Now, somebody tell me, this is on page 792 to 795. Somebody pick a line. Just anybody, pick a line. What do you think? Hannah, what do you think I'm going to put on the test? You've had it.
I'm going to go with probably the first 3 lines of the book.
First 3 lines?
I don't know.
Okay, well, that might
Go to the I until the.
Oh, the I thing. The I thing.
Yeah, the I thing.
There you go.
There we go. So probably if
Until
you... Okay, good. This is about line 45 or so, down to we see into the life of things. It's that I made quiet. Now, do you see that? Okay. Let's just for a second say, why do you think that would be on the test? Why these 3 words would be on the test? Number 1, I've said it a lot of times. Number 2, it ought to be underlined in your books by now. And number 3, it really highlights what Wordsworth is talking about. And then Coleridge, right? Then Coleridge, it's those caverns measureless to me. And when he, what was that I just was looking at? That, oh yeah, that line about where he said that, where he had fallen asleep, profound sleep, at least of the external senses. So it's that whole idea of don't worry about what you can see, touch, hear, taste, measure, feel, all of that. That eye is made quiet, and then we see into the life of things with our hearts, our spirits, our souls. 3 words. I typically don't give more than like 2 or 3 lines at a time, okay, on these, on the poems, because you can reduce it to just a little image, right? You can come down to something that small that's going to convey something. What else might be there? Somebody pick another.
From which one?
From Tintern Abbey. Or you could do Kubla Khan. We've got both of them.
What line was I made quiet?
That's 47 or 8.
And I felt a presence that disturbs me with the joy of elevated thoughts, a sense of sublime.
Aha. Why would I put that on there? That's
Sublime.
It's got the word sublime in there, right?
Sublime.
That's on page
95.
794. Yes, 794, page 794, line 93 to 95. And I have felt a presence that disturbs me with the joy of elevated thoughts, a sense sublime. I might also give you something of something far more deeply interfused, whose dwelling is the light of setting suns. Okay,
When you say this on the test, what are you asking us for?
okay, what I'll do, I'll give you a line.
You want us to tell which one it came from.
Right. So what I'll do is I'll give you like a page like this, and it'll have 2 blanks, and then I made quiet, and you write Wordsworth, and you write Tintern Abbey. Yeah. Okay. That's why you need to know the titles and the authors. For one thing, if you figure out the title, then you've got, because this will be 1 point and this will be 1 or 2 points or however much. Each blank counts a certain amount. Okay? How about blank?
Are we going to need to know what the quote means?
You might need to know what the quote means in the sense that, like if I gave you the definition, or gave you the word sublime and said, define the word sublime. Because it is online. You have the definition of the sublime online, and I have told you in class. Okay. So if I said that, then I might say, and give me an example. And what I might say, give me an example of the sublime from one of the quotes that's even on the test. And so that thing about the light of setting suns and all of that, that is at line 96 on page, 96 and 97 on page 7 and 94. That, and then that might, or even like the sunless K, the sunless C, that would be a really good one. Patterns measureless to man, down to a sunless C. That's a really good example of the sublime, because it goes, it's transcendent, we can't measure it, and it's the light of setting suns, death, connected with death and frightening stuff, like Job encountering God in the whirlwind. So, caverns measureless to man down to a sunless sea, that could be a really good example of the sublime. So what I might do, if I gave you that, then I would give you this sort of thing, where it's quotes, and you just tell me title and author. Title, author. And then on the other part of the test, I will most likely give you I will ask you to recreate the genre wheel for 11 points. I think I always do that. You need to know the 4 genres, which ones move, which way they move, the plot, and then the 3 kinds of the lyric.
Something they go down the right, the last one don't have an arrow.
That's right.
It was in the last week's lecture. It was like, oh yeah, that's right. You were gone.
Okay, hold on. If you missed a class, go back and watch the video. If you missed a class, go back and watch the video. Yeah, you'll need to watch the video. If you have missed a class, go back and watch the video. Okay. Don't forget Wordsworth's definition of poetry. Characteristics of neoclassical poetry, Augustan poetry, all of that, as opposed to romantic poetry. You also want to think about, satire. The kinds of satire, definition of satire.
The
Juvenalian and Horatian, yes. Oh, how to scan 2 lines of iambic pentameter, heroic couplet. What is a heroic couplet? I mean, all these things should be in your notes. You know, what is a heroic couplet? It's 2 lines of rhymed iambic pentameter that express a complete thought. And then you need to be able to take 2 lines of iambic pentameter, like 2 lines out of Pope's Right to the Lot, and scan them so that you're breaking it into syllables, breaking it into feet, marking the accented and unaccented syllables. All of these things are in your notes, yes.
What are we doing Wednesday?
Wednesday we're going to talk about Keats' Ode on a Grecian Urn and review for another 5 minutes.
Okay, and that's going to be on our exam as well?
Yes, Keats' Ode on a Grecian Urn will be on your exam as well.